the silent womb. Walk with me and you will know the pain when heavens are silent. Not the silence of peace, but the silence that lingers after unanswered prayers. For years my womb lay closed, as though heaven itself had bolted its doors against me. I watched as other women bore children, their laughter echoing through the courts of Israel. Yet in my house, the sound of children's feet never touched the floor. The empty space mocked me. The cradle stayed bare, year after year, season after season. Peninnah, my husband's other wife, had no lack of children. Her arms were always full, her voice always taunting. Where are your sons, Hannah? Where are your daughters? Her words pierced sharper than a sword. I would turn away, my heart trembling, unable to answer the question that gnawed at my very soul. Elkanah, my husband, loved me. He would say, "Am I not better to you than 10 sons?" His love was kind, but it did not soothe the ache of barrenness. For a woman in Israel, to be childless was to carry reproach, to wear shame like a garment that could not be taken off. I carried that shame quietly, but not without tears. Night after night I wept, I prayed, I pleaded. My lips moved, but no answer came. My womb stayed still. And so, I ask you, walk with me in that silence. Feel the weight of longing unfulfilled. Know the torment of being seen as less, while your heart burns with desire for more. This was my beginning, my silent womb, where hope seemed buried and despair sought to take root. Yet even in silence, God was listening. The bitter tears. There is a kind of sorrow that words cannot carry, a heaviness too deep for speech. I lived in that sorrow. Day after day, I wore the mask of a wife, but inside I crumbled beneath the weight of emptiness. At Shiloh, when others went up to offer sacrifices and feasted with gladness, I ate little, for food turned bitter in my mouth. My heart was consumed by the thought of what I did not have. My womb was empty, and so was my joy. Peninnah's taunts grew sharper during those pilgrimages. As her children ran around her skirts, she would look at me with sly triumph. Her words were not whispers, but daggers hurled in the open. The Lord has blessed me, Hannah. But what has He given you? I tried to stand strong, but my heart broke again and again. I withdrew from the table, slipping away where no one would see, and I let the tears flow. Bitter tears, the kind that burn the skin as they fall. Tears that wash no relief, because the wound inside remains open. Have you ever wept until your heart broke open, until your body shook with sobs you could not contain? That was me, year after year. My voice would not rise above the pain, so only my lips moved in silent cries to God. My prayers were drenched in grief, my words tangled in sorrow, my heart poured out like water upon the ground. Even Elkanah's kindness could not reach me there. His love was steady, but it could not fill the void of barrenness. He thought his affection might heal me, but love from man cannot cure what only God can restore. There were nights when I lay awake, staring into the darkness, asking the same questions over and over. Why me, Lord? Why the silence? Why the delay? Am I forgotten? Am I unloved? I was not the only barren woman in Israel, but in my heart it felt as though my pain was the loneliest in the world. I carried it like a hidden wound, raw and unhealed, waiting for the touch of the divine physician. This is the place of bitter tears, where faith and despair wrestle, where prayer feels unanswered, and yet you keep praying still. My womb was silent, but my soul screamed. How deep a woman's longing can go, how fierce the heartache of an unfulfilled prayer can become. And yet, though I did not know it then, the Lord was not deaf to my cries. My bitter tears watered the ground where His promise would one day bloom. The vow at Shiloh. The day came when my tears could no longer stay hidden. At Shiloh, after the feast, I rose quietly from the table. My steps were heavy, my eyes swollen from weeping, my heart pounding with both despair and desperate hope. I could not keep the pain inside any longer. It had to be poured out before the Lord. I went to the doorway of the house of God, where Eli the priest sat watching. There I fell to my knees, my body trembling, my hands clutching at the ground, as though I might hold myself together. The weight of years of barrenness pressed down upon me, and I could not stand beneath it. My lips began to move, to mourn, but no sound came. The prayer rose not from my throat, but from my broken heart. Every unspoken cry, every hidden shame, every bitter tear turned into silent words before the Lord. I prayed as one undone. O Lord of hosts, if you will indeed look on the affliction of your servant, if you will remember me and not forget me, but give to your servant a son, then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life, and no razor shall touch his head. It was not the polished prayer of the righteous. It was the raw vow of a desperate woman. I was not bargaining with God. I was surrendering. If He would bless me, then the child would not be mine to boast in, nor mine to cling to, but His alone. In that moment, something shifted inside me. My grief was still real, but my prayer was no longer about myself. It was about Him. My longing was turned into an offering. The very pain that had crushed me became the soil for a vow that bound my heart to the Lord in a new way. But Eli misunderstood. He saw my lips moving without sound and judged me harshly. "How long will you go on being drunk? Put your wine away from you." Ah, how deep the sting of false judgment when one is already wounded. Yet even in my brokenness, I did not lash out. I answered with trembling humility, "No, my Lord, I am a woman troubled in spirit. I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink, but I have been pouring out my soul before the Lord. Do not regard your servant as a worthless woman, for all along I have been speaking out of my great barren vexation." Eli's face softened, and he spoke words that seemed to pierce heaven itself. "Go in peace, and the God of Israel grant your petition that you have made to Him." I rose from that place changed. The tears had not ceased, but their bitterness was gone. My face, once cast down, was lifted. Hope had taken root where despair had reigned. I had poured out my heart, and in return, the Lord had poured in His peace. That day I left Shiloh still barren, yet no longer empty. My vow was sealed, my soul steadied. Something holy had been planted in me, not yet a child, but a promise. The Song of Reversal and Redemption. When my lips parted to pray that day, the words did not come from me alone. They were drawn from a well deeper than my sorrow, deeper than my joy, deeper than the birth of my son. They came from the Spirit of the Lord, who stirred in me a hymn of truth that belongs not only to Hannah, but to Israel and to all generations. My heart rejoices in the Lord. I had known the hollows of barrenness, the sting of mocking, the shame of emptiness. Yet now I knew something far greater, joy not rooted in a child, not in vindication, but in the Lord himself. He had lifted my head, filled my arms, and steadied my heart. My joy was not fragile, for it rested in the one who cannot fail. My horn is lifted high. Strength had never been mine. I was the weak one, the overlooked one, the barren one. Yet the Lord gave me a horn of strength, a symbol of honor and power. This was not my doing, nor my husband's favor, nor even the birth of Samuel. It was the hand of God raising the lowly. The bows of the mighty are broken, but the feeble gird on strength. Here lies the mystery of his kingdom. The great are humbled, and the humble are raised. I had seen Peninnah's mocking lips silenced, not by my retaliation, but by God's justice. He delights to turn the scales of the world upside down. Those who think themselves secure in power find their weapons shattered, while the frail are clothed in his might. The barren has borne 7, but she who has many sons pines away. These words were not spite, but revelation. Fruitfulness is never man's achievement. It is always God's gift. He can make the womb flourish or wither, raise life from dust, or return the boastful to silence. In him alone does true fruitfulness dwell. Fruit of the womb, fruit of the Spirit, fruit unto eternal life. The Lord brings death and makes alive. He brings down to Sheol and raises up. What greater confession is there than this? The power of life and death belongs to no idol, no king, no enemy, no circumstance, only to my God. He is sovereign over the grave, and even in the dust of despair, he whispers resurrection. In my son's life, I saw a shadow of his greater promise, the anointed one who would conquer death itself. He raises the poor from the dust and lifts the needy from the ash heap. He seats them with princes and has them inherit a throne of honor. Was this not my very story? From the dust of humiliation, from the ashes of tears, he lifted me, not only to cradle Samuel, but to sit in his presence, clothed with honor not earned, but given. I saw then what my eyes had not dared imagine. The Lord was shaping kingship, and through my child would come the prophet who would anoint Israel's first king, and beyond him the line of the Messiah. For the pillars of the earth are the Lord's, and on them he has set the world. Every power, every nation, every womb, every story rest upon his foundation. Nothing is too small to escape his notice, nothing too great to slip from his hand. He will guard the feet of his faithful ones, but the wicked will be silenced in darkness. I had walked a hard road, but my steps were not abandoned. I had stumbled in tears, but he had steadied me. The wickedness that sought to consume me was swallowed in silence, but my song rose in the light. The Lord will give strength to his king and exalt the horn of his anointed. And here, without fully knowing, My lips uttered prophecy. For my son Samuel would anoint the king, and through that king's line would come the anointed one, the Christ, the Savior of the nations. What began in my womb with sorrow and hope would culminate in his womb of redemption for the world. So I prayed, not only as a mother, but as a witness. My song was no longer my own. It was the Spirit's testimony of the God who reverses, redeems, and reigns. My thanksgiving was not only for Samuel, but for the salvation yet to come. And so I say to every weary soul, every barren heart, every mocked and broken one, let my prayer be yours. For the Lord still humbles the proud, still lifts the lowly, still fills the empty, and still brings forth life where there was none. The Surrender at Shiloh. The years of nursing passed quickly, far too quickly. Samuel grew strong, his eyes bright with wonder, his laughter ringing through our home like a melody I never wanted to end. To any mother, the days of holding a child close are fleeting, but to me, they were also heavy with the knowledge of what was coming. I had vowed, and the vow was not mine alone anymore. It was written into the very life of my son. The same arms that had ached in emptiness for years now ached with the thought of release. Every night as Samuel lay sleeping, I watched his little chest rise and fall and whispered, "Lord, you gave him. He is yours. Strengthen me for the day I must return him to you." When he was weaned, I knew the time had come. My heart felt torn in two, but my spirit was steady. Elkanah, my husband, reminded me gently, "Do what seems best to you. Only may the Lord establish his word." And so I gathered what I had vowed, a 3-year-old bull, flour, and wine for the offering, and I took Samuel by the hand. The road to Shiloh felt longer than ever before. Every step was a step of surrender. Samuel's small fingers curled around mine, trusting, innocent, unaware of the weight of this journey. He skipped at times, asking questions about the temple, about the priests, about the God to whom I had so often prayed. I answered softly, tears hidden in my voice, for I was walking my greatest obedience yet. When at last we stood before Eli, the priest who had once misunderstood my prayer, I said to him, "Oh, my Lord, as your soul lives, I am the woman who stood here beside you, praying to the Lord. For this child I prayed, and the Lord has granted me my petition that I made to him. Therefore I have lent him to the Lord. As long as he lives, he is lent to the Lord." And with trembling hands, I placed Samuel into Eli's care. No words can describe that moment. To release the child I had yearned for, the child who had erased my barrenness, was to tear myself open again. Yet in that surrender, I found something deeper than loss. I found peace. My son was safe, not because he was in my arms, but because he was in the Lord's hands. That night, I did not sleep with him by my side. His little voice did not call for me. His warmth did not rest against my chest. But my heart rested in the God who had remembered me. Samuel was no longer only my son. He was the Lord's servant, the beginning of a new story in Israel. My womb had birthed a child, but my surrender had birthed obedience. And so I left Shiloh lighter than I came, not because the sacrifice was easy, but because the Lord received it. My sorrow was not erased, but it was transformed into worship. The years of return. Year after year I returned to Shiloh. Each journey carried with it a weight of memory. The years when I came barren, the tears I shed in silent prayers, the shame that clung to me like a shadow. But now I returned not as the woman of sorrow, but as the mother of promise. Samuel greeted me each time with eyes brighter, stature taller, and words more filled with grace. He was not mine in the way other children are their mothers. He was clothed in priestly garments, not the rough tunic of childhood play. Yet though I had given him to the Lord had not taken him from me. Each year I brought him a robe I had woven with my own hands. The fabric was simple, but every thread was a prayer. As I stitched, I whispered, "Let him be strong in spirit, Lord. Let him hear your voice more clearly than mine. Let his heart never turn aside." The robe was more than clothing. It was my love made visible, my intercession made tangible. When I placed it upon him, my fingers lingered on his shoulders, and I whispered, "Walk in his ways, my son." He would smile with the innocence of a child, but his eyes, his eyes, already carried the weight of destiny. Eli blessed me each time I came, saying, "May the Lord give you more children by this woman, for the one she asked of the Lord." And so it was. The Lord opened my womb again, and I bore sons and daughters. Yet, even with a full table, my heart never ceased to ache and rejoice in Samuel all at once. I would watch him minister before the Lord, a boy in linen ephod, lighting lamps, opening doors, learning the ways of God's house. He was so small among the priests, yet he moved as though grace had clothed him. I knew then the Lord himself was teaching him. As I returned home each time, I carried peace. For though I left Samuel behind, I knew he was never alone. The God who remembered me in my barrenness was now remembering Israel through him. The years of return were not years of loss, but of witness. I watched the boy I had prayed for become the man of God I had promised. And in every step, I learned again what it meant to give, and to trust that what is given to the Lord is never lost. Samuel's calling. I was not there the night the Lord first spoke to my son. Yet when word reached me, my heart trembled as though I had heard it myself. It was said Samuel lay down in the house of the Lord, where the ark of God was kept, the lamp of God still burning. In the stillness of night, when others slept, a voice called his name, "Samuel." He thought it was Eli. Once, twice, 3 times he rose and ran to the old priest. "Here I am, for you called me." But Eli had not spoken. Only on the 3rd time did the aged man perceive what I had always believed, that the child was chosen for a greater hearing. And so Eli told him, "If he calls you again, say, 'Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. My Samuel, my son who once was the answer to my whispered weeping, now became the vessel for the very voice of God." The Lord came and stood, calling as before, and Samuel answered as a servant. From that night onward, the word of the Lord was no longer rare in Israel. My son became the mouthpiece of the Almighty. I imagined his small frame lying still, heart pounding, as the voice of eternity broke into his youth. Did he feel afraid? Did he feel unworthy, as I once did in my barrenness? Or did he feel the same fire that once burned in me when I prayed at Shiloh, the fire that would not let go until heaven answered? I wept when I heard it. not with sorrow, but with awe. My son belonged to God more than he ever belonged to me. I had given him, and the Lord had received him fully. As the years unfolded, Samuel's name became known from Dan to Beersheba. They said the Lord was with him, and not one of his words fell to the ground. But I remembered him first as the boy I left at Shiloh, the boy I clothed with a robe of prayer, the boy whose life was birthed from my tears. And so my story, once marked by shame, became the foundation for a prophet's rise. Out of barrenness came a voice for the nation. Out of my weakness came God's strength. Out of my womb came a man who would anoint kings and call a people back to covenant. I know now why the Lord closed my womb for so long. He was not withholding. He was preparing. The pain that broke me also purified me, so that when the answer came, I would hold it with open hands, not clenched fists. My Samuel, my firstborn, my offering, his calling was my vindication. And in his voice I still hear the heart of my own prayer. Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening.